Welcome to another audit walkthrough video from SuperfastCPA. I'm Logan, and in today's video, we're going to be going over Audit Area 1. This is Section F1. This is a remembering and understanding topic. Identify the matters related to the planned scope and timing of an engagement that should be communicated to management and those charged with governance. And we're going to be doing that the SuperfastCPA way, which is diving straight into the questions. If you don't know much about our strategies, make sure you go to SuperfastCPA.com and check out our free 1-hour webinar training. We go over the key ingredients to passing the CPA exam, and again, it's 1 hour, it is free, and it will save you so much time struggling with the CPA exam. So make sure you check out the webinar, and after you check that out, you're going to want to learn more, so make sure you also check out becoming a SuperfastCPA Pro member. SuperfastCPA Pro members get access to the Pro course, where Nate explains in detail exactly what you're supposed to be doing every single day to pass the exams, and it's kind of like a more in-depth version of the 1-hour webinar, much more in-depth. And also, Pro members get access to the full 10-question versions of these 5-question YouTube videos that I typically make. Now, just to be upfront and honest, in this video, we're only going to be going over 5 questions for the YouTube version and for the member version because this is a pretty small topic, but it's still one that I wanted to cover in the blueprints. So we're only going to go over 5 questions today, and members will also get only 5 questions, but most of the time, members get access to the full 10-question versions of the videos where I go over an additional 5 questions so that members can get a little bit more understanding and a little bit more help. So if you like this and you like the other videos about audit or even about FAR or Reg or TCP, then make sure you check out becoming a Pro member of SuperfastCPA so you can get access to the full versions of these videos. Now, with all that said, let's dive straight into the questions. Okay, here we are at question 1, and like I said, this is a pretty straightforward topic, a pretty small topic, so we're only going to be going over 5 questions, so let's dive into these questions. For question 1, which of the following is a matter related to the planned scope and timing of an audit engagement that an auditor should communicate to those charged with governance? Okay, is it option A, specific details of the audit procedures to be performed, B, how significant risks of material misstatement will be addressed, C, the detailed audit plan including all tests of controls, or D, only the estimated completion date of the audit? So as far as the planned scope and timing of the audit engagement, what are they going to communicate to management about that? If you don't know the answer, that's okay. We're going to learn from this question. If you have an idea, or if you want to kind of pause the video and think through these different options to have a guess, then go ahead and do that. And when you're ready, come back, we'll look at the answer together. All right, here we are. The answer is B, how significant risks of material misstatement will be addressed. So let's talk about this. The auditor explains to management how significant risks of material misstatement will be addressed to help those charged with governance understand the key areas of focus for the audit. This communication promotes transparency and supports governance in their oversight role. However, the auditor avoids sharing too much detail about specific audit procedures to keep the audit unpredictable and effective. Instead, the focus is on discussing the main risks and how they will be managed without revealing steps that could reduce the effectiveness of the audit. So essentially, when they're communicating to management the scope, the timing, the things that they're going to do in the audit engagement, they're giving them a general overview of some of the things that they are hoping to address, some of the things that they're going to look at, their key areas of focus. But again, they are not going to give them too much information because then management would know exactly what they're going to do, and that would kind of defeat the purpose of some of the audit procedures. So that's some of the things that they need to communicate to management about the scope and timing of an audit. Now let's go to the next question. All right, here we are at question 2. An auditor plans to rely on the internal audit staff for specific tasks. What is the appropriate action regarding communication with those charged with governance? Okay, let's go through the options. Option A, do not disclose the use of internal audit staff as it is part of the auditor's responsibility. B, communicate the planned use of internal audit staff as part of the audit approach. C, seek written approval from governance to use internal audit staff. Or D, avoid mentioning internal audit involvement to maintain independence. So are they going to tell them that they're using their internal auditors? What do they need to communicate to management about this? If you have an idea, pause the video and think through this. If not, that's okay. We're going to look at the answer together to learn about this. Okay, here we are. The answer is B, communicate the planned use of internal audit staff as part of the audit approach. Okay, let's go through this explanation. The auditor should communicate the planned use of internal audit staff to keep those charged with governance informed about how the audit will be conducted. This helps governance understand how resources, such as the internal audit team, will be used to support the audit process. Even though internal audit staff may assist with specific tasks, the auditor retains full responsibility for the audit and its conclusions. And we're going to talk about internal auditors and using the work of others and things like that in the future, so don't worry about that. By discussing this in advance, the auditor ensures transparency and clarifies the roles and boundaries of the internal audit staff's involvement. Essentially, and we're just talking about the communication side of things here, auditors have to communicate what they're going to use internal audit staff for so that management knows what they're going to be doing. But remember, internal audit staff is not responsible for the audit. The auditor is just using them to help them, but they are not in charge of the audit. the auditor/auditors themselves are in charge of the audit, not the internal auditors. With that, let's go to the next question. All right, here we are at question 3. Why is it important for an auditor to avoid providing too much detail about planned audit procedures to those charged with governance? Now, if I'm being honest, we talked about this a little bit in question 1, so if you were paying attention, you will probably be able to get this. Let's go through the options. A, to prevent governance from misunderstanding the audit's purpose. B, to ensure the auditor retains independence in judgment. C, to avoid making audit procedures predictable. Or D, to comply with GAS requirements, and that's generally accepted auditing standards. Okay, so again, if you were paying attention in question 1, we talked about this a little bit, so I would like you to pause the video, think through this one if you need to, and when you're ready to come back, we'll look at the answer together. Okay, here we are. The answer is C, to avoid making audit procedures predictable. So, maybe this isn't the only reason that you don't want to tell management about this, but this is a big reason. Providing too much detail about planned audit procedures can make the audit predictable, which reduces its effectiveness. Why? If those charged with governance know exactly what the auditor plans to do, it could make it easier for someone to manipulate the process or avoid detection of errors or fraud. To prevent this, the auditor shares only the necessary information to explain the overall approach and focus areas of the audit, while keeping specific procedures confidential to protect the integrity of the audit process. So, as we're talking about communication to management in this video, remember, you want to communicate to management generally what you're doing, but you don't want to tell them too many specifics because, again, if they know exactly what you're going to be doing in advance, then they can potentially change things so that you see what they want you to see. And, that would be fraud and things like that. And the point of an audit is to audit things as they are, to detect things, to see how they really are. And we don't want to have false information or have management knowing exactly what auditors are going to do. At any rate, with that, let's go to the next question. Okay, here we are at question 4. Which of the following would be included in an auditor's communication about the planned scope and timing of an audit? Okay, we've talked about some of these things potentially. Let's go through the options. A, a list of journal entries to be tested for fraud. B, the expected audit opinion to be issued. C, specific amounts determined for materiality thresholds. Or D, initial views about areas requiring significant auditor attention. Okay, so what do you think they are going to be communicating to management out of these different options? If you have any idea, or if you already know, that's great. If you don't, maybe think through this, pause the video if you need to, and when you're ready, come back, we'll look at the answer together. Okay, here we are. The answer is D, initial views about areas requiring significant auditor attention. This is something that the auditor should communicate about the scope and timing of an audit to management. So let's go through this. The auditor communicates initial views about areas requiring significant attention to help those charged with governance understand the main focus of the audit. This allows governance to provide input on critical areas and ensures alignment on key priorities. While these high-level views are shared, the auditor does not disclose detailed information about specific journal entries or materiality thresholds. That's a big one, by the way. You don't want to let management know your materiality threshold because they could change things to make it so that it's under that threshold, as those are too detailed and could compromise the auditor's effectiveness or objectivity. Instead, the communication is focused on broader areas that may impact the financial statements or require special consideration. And one thing that I do want to talk about also is you should never go into an audit with an expected audit opinion. That is completely against the point of an audit. And we haven't talked about audit opinions yet. We'll get there. Basically, audit opinion is when you give out, hey, this company's financials are correct, or hey, there's something wrong here, or maybe even that there's fraud, whatever the case is. Again, we'll talk about that in more detail later, but you should never go into an audit with an expected audit opinion to be issued because that defeats the purpose of integrity and objectivity and independence and things like that. At any rate, now let's go to the next question. Okay, here we are at question 5. When discussing attitudes, awareness, and actions regarding internal controls and fraud with those charged with governance, the auditor should, let's go through the options. Option A, depend solely on management to provide these insights. B, share their own conclusions without asking for input. C, ask questions and discuss any significant changes or issues from previous audits. Or D, avoid discussing fraud to maintain objectivity. Okay, so out of those, I think that probably 2 of them would make sense to you, and 2 of them probably don't make that much sense. So if you need to, think through this, pause the video, gain your own opinion, and when you're ready, come back, we'll look at the answer together. Okay, here we are at the answer. C, ask questions and discuss any significant changes or issues from previous audits. So let's talk about this explanation. The auditor engages those charged with governance in a discussion about their views and actions related to internal controls, fraud, and any major changes that could affect the audit. These conversations provide important insights that help the auditor identify risks and determine areas requiring closer attention. Revisiting previously communicated matters ensures that any unresolved issues are followed up on and addressed appropriately. This exchange of information strengthens the audit process and supports effective oversight. So there's not just, management communicating to the auditor is communicating to management. It's kind of like a back and forth so that everybody can kind of know where things are. Governance tells the auditor their views on certain things. The auditor communicates with management and those with governance what they're going to be doing generally and things like that. Overall, when you communicate the scope and timing and things like that with management, you are letting them know what you're planning on doing for the audit and things that you are going to need and people or resources that you're going to use. But as always, remember, you are not diving too deep into things because you don't want management to know everything that you're going to be doing. With all that, again, we've gone over 5 questions, and those are the only 5 questions that we're going to be going over in today's video, even for members, because it's a pretty small, pretty straightforward topic. But before we do anything else, let's do one more part of the SuperFast CPA process called Pillar Topics. Now, the idea behind Pillar Topics is as you're going through the questions to learn the material, you will notice the things that keep popping up. You'll notice that there are a few questions trying to teach you about how to communicate with management, the scope and timing of an audit, or things like that. Again, it's the things that keep coming up in your questions. You know that these are the important things to write down, so you write them down as pillar topics so that you know the most important things you need to know for test day. And you do this in your own words, and as you do this each day, you're building your own personal repository of your own understanding of the most important things you need to know so that you're prepared, again, for test day. With all that, let's go ahead and look at the pillar topics for this video. Okay, here we are at the pillar topics for this video, so let's just walk through them. First, let's talk about significant risks and focus areas. Auditors should communicate how significant risks of material misstatement will be addressed, focusing on high-level plans rather than specific procedures. This ensures governance understands key audit priorities while maintaining the audit's unpredictability and effectiveness. Now let's talk about the role of internal audit staff, and honestly, you would also just communicate anybody that's being used in the audit, not just the internal audit staff. The planned use of internal audit staff should be shared with governance to clarify resource allocation while emphasizing the auditor's ultimate responsibility for the engagement. This fosters transparency and ensures clear expectations about the internal audit team's role. Okay, now we're going to talk about balancing communication and confidentiality. This is something that we kind of hit all throughout the video. While discussing the audit approach, auditors must provide enough information to support governance oversight without overdisclosing detailed procedures. Keeping some aspects of the audit confidential prevents predictability, protecting the integrity of the audit process. Now let's talk about engaging governance on key matters. Auditors should engage governance in discussions about their attitudes, awareness, and actions regarding internal controls, fraud, and significant changes. These conversations uncover valuable insights, help identify risks, and ensure unresolved issues from prior audits are addressed. And then finally, preliminary audit views, or initial views, however you want to say it. Auditors share initial views about areas requiring significant attention to align governance on the audit's priorities. They let governance know, hey, these are some things that we think are going to be important. So these are some of the things that we're going to be providing a significant attention to them, and so that governance knows that about the audit priorities. This includes discussing broader concerns or changes in the financial reporting framework, but not detailed materiality thresholds or specific test plans. Again, we talked about that all throughout the video. You want to communicate just enough to management that they understand what you are doing and the purpose of the audit, but you don't want them to know everything that you're going to be doing because that would ruin the whole point of the audit procedures. With all that, we've gone over the pillar topics and the 5 questions for this video. Remember, SuperFast CPA Pro members get access to the full versions of these videos. Typically, they are 10 questions long. So if you like this and you like our other videos, remember that you can get the full 10-question versions of these videos to get more help and more understanding if you become a SuperFast CPA Pro member. And the easiest way to learn about and become a SuperFast CPA Pro member is by first going to superfastcpa.com and checking out our free 1-hour webinar training. Again, it's free. It is 1 hour, and we will teach you the key ingredients to passing the CPA exam, and that will give you a great doorway into learning more about SuperFast CPA and learning more about becoming a pro member and becoming a pro member. Now, with all that, if you liked the video, make sure to like it and leave a comment. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you in the next video.